The Dark Side of Virtue, What Machiavelli Really Taught About Power. Have you ever stopped to think that virtue, that noble quality we've been taught to admire, might have a dark side? What if what you call goodness is actually a trap that holds you back from thriving, leading, or even surviving in a ruthless world? Machiavelli, with his brutally honest view of human nature, reveals that behind the mask of virtue lies a far more strategic, raw, and powerful reality. In this video, we're going to uncover what Machiavelli really meant by virtue, and how his insights can radically change the way you see power, morality, and human relationship. Get ready for a provocative journey, because sometimes, to win, you must understand the hidden side of what people call virtue. If this introduction already made you think differently, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because here we uncover what others are too afraid to say. And by the end, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you still believe being good is always the best path? Topic 1. The illusion of morality in a ruthless world. In a world where appearances often matter more than intentions, morality can easily become a performance rather than a principle. Machiavelli recognized this early on, observing that rulers who appeared moral often held power longer than those who truly tried to govern ethically. The key was not goodness, it was perception. This idea turns traditional ethics upside down. While society teaches us to be honest, generous, and kind, Machiavelli warned that such traits, when displayed without caution, could become tools of manipulation for others. Those who cling to moral ideals blindly may find themselves exploited by more cunning players. One of Machiavelli's most powerful insights is that people are not always good, and pretending otherwise is dangerous. He wasn't promoting evil, but strategic realism. A leader, or even an ordinary person navigating the social world, must understand that being too virtuous can invite betrayal, envy, or weakness in the eyes of others. This doesn't mean one should be cruel. It means one must balance virtue with vigilance. To act as if the world is just, when it clearly isn't, is to walk into traps laid by those who understand power better than you do. Machiavelli's The Prince teaches that it's more important to appear good than to be good. This distinction is brutal but practical. The masses are easily swayed by appearances, not by the complexity of intentions. Most people judge actions by outcomes, not by motives. Imagine a politician who always tells the truth, even when it causes panic or conflict. Now imagine another who lies skillfully, maintaining public confidence and order. Which one will last longer? Machiavelli would argue, the second, because survival often depends on strategy, not sincerity. This leads us to a hard truth. Morality can become a luxury for those who have already secured power. But for those still climbing, morality must often be adjusted, concealed, or even sacrificed, not for evil's sake, but for survival. The illusion of morality works both ways. People want to believe their leaders are just, their lovers are loyal, and their friends are honest, even when evidence suggests otherwise. That psychological need for virtue opens a door for manipulation. Machiavelli wasn't celebrating manipulation. He was revealing how it works in real life. To ignore this truth is to live in a fantasy, and in fantasy you get crushed by reality. In business, relationships, and politics, the same principle holds. He who understands the illusion of morality can lead others who are blinded by it. That's why many powerful figures cultivate an image of kindness, generosity, or spirituality, even if their private behavior contradicts it. What Machiavelli saw clearly is that people don't necessarily want truth. They want comfort, reassurance, and hope. Virtue offers that, even if it's fake, and whoever offers it convincingly earns trust, loyalty, and control. So, if you truly want to navigate this world wisely, stop asking, "Is this good?" Start asking, "Is this useful? Is this sustainable? What image does this create?" Of course, some will reject this mindset, calling it cynical. But is it cynical or simply honest? Machiavelli forces us to confront questions most people avoid, not because they're wrong, but because they're uncomfortable. And here's the irony. Even those who criticize Machiavellian strategies often use them unconsciously. Ever smiled at someone you dislike? Ever praised someone to gain favor? That's not morality. That's strategy dressed as kindness. So, if we live in a world ruled by perception, doesn't it make sense to master it instead of being crushed by it? That's what Machiavelli was offering. Not evil, but survival through wisdom. Many believe that being virtuous will naturally bring reward. But reality shows otherwise. Often, the most naive are the most betrayed, the most honest are the most broken, and the most generous are the most used. The real question is, can you protect your values without letting them destroy you? Can you live with virtue without being blind to the tactics of those who don't? To do that, you must learn to wear virtue as armor, not as a chain. You must wield it, not be ruled by it. Because only then does virtue become strength, not weakness. And that's the first lesson from the dark side of virtue. Morality, if not handled wisely, becomes a liability. But when fused with strategic thinking, it can become the most powerful tool of all. Before we move on, let me ask you, have you ever felt punished for being too kind, too honest, or too good-hearted? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might open someone's eyes. Topic 2. Why good people often lose, and what Machiavelli would say about it. One of the most painful truths in life is seeing genuinely good people fall behind. They love deeply, give freely, and play fair, yet they're overlooked, taken advantage of, or outright crushed. Why does this happen? Machiavelli would say, because the world does not reward goodness, it rewards strategy. In many cultures, we're taught that doing the right thing will lead to success. But real life often operates on different rules. It's not the kindest who rise, but the most adaptable, those who understand timing, perception, and influence. Machiavelli made it clear. A leader must not always be good, but must know how to appear good when necessary, and evil when required. That balance, between image and action, is what separates those who survive from those who suffer. Good people often assume that everyone else plays by the same rules. They expect reciprocity, honesty, and justice. But when betrayal comes, it shocks them, because they weren't trained to see it coming. This isn't about becoming heartless, it's about becoming aware. If you're a good person, Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to change who you are. He'd tell you to add armor to your kindness, and strategy to your compassion. Think of it like this. Being good in a brutal world is like walking barefoot in a battlefield. You'll bleed not because your heart is wrong, but because your preparation is weak. So how do you protect yourself without becoming someone you hate? Machiavelli would suggest you adopt flexibility without abandoning your core values. Be unpredictable when needed, soft when it's safe, and ruthless only when it protects what matters. Many good people hesitate to say no, to set boundaries, or to speak hard truths. But in doing so, they allow others to dominate them. In Machiavellian terms, that's a loss of power, and power, once lost, is rarely recovered without a fight. The cruel irony is that people often respect strength more than kindness. They may admire your heart, but they'll follow the one who commands presence and authority. This doesn't mean you must become aggressive. It means you must learn the art of presence, the language of power, and the dance of influence. Machiavelli would advise you, don't let your goodness become your downfall. Let it be your foundation, but build your walls with wisdom, caution, and calculated action. Every time you avoid confrontation to keep the peace, ask yourself, whose peace are you protecting, yours or theirs? Sometimes, silence is not virtue, it's surrender. If you've ever lost an opportunity, a relationship, or a position because you were too nice, understand, you weren't wrong, but you were unprepared. Machiavelli teaches us that power respects those who respect themselves first. That means you must learn to draw lines, defend your space, and never confuse being agreeable with being weak. True goodness must evolve. It must be paired with discernment, fortified by strategy, and guided by clarity. Otherwise, it risks becoming a self-sabotaging force. This isn't about abandoning your soul. It's about refining your soul with the sharpness of mind. Because in a world full of masks, only the wise thrive. So ask yourself, are you losing because you're good, or because you haven't yet learned how to protect your goodness with strength? And if you relate to this, leave a comment below. What's one time in your life when your kindness backfired? Let's bring this conversation into the light. Topic 3. The power of perception, why image beats reality. Machiavelli understood something that most people still resist. Perception is often more powerful than truth. In the theater of life, what people believe about you frequently matters more than who you really are. This might sound unjust, but it's the operating system of human society, and those who master it gain the upper hand. In politics, business, and even personal relationships, those who control the narrative tend to control the outcome. That's why Machiavelli insisted that a ruler must learn to simulate virtue, not necessarily possess it. It's not about being dishonest. It's about playing the game strategically. When someone appears confident, powerful, or compassionate, people respond instinctively, often without verifying if those qualities are real. This creates a space where image becomes currency, and authenticity becomes secondary. Machiavelli saw this as a dangerous but inescapable truth. Consider how easily public figures craft personas. The gentle philanthropist, the humble servant, the noble leader, all roles carefully constructed to generate trust, loyalty, and admiration. Yet behind the curtain, these personas may be nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Does this mean you should fake who you are? Not necessarily. But it means you must understand that your essence alone isn't enough. Your projection must be intentional. Good people who neglect this lesson often feel invisible or misunderstood, because they expect their character to speak louder than their image. Machiavelli would argue, if you don't shape how others perceive you, someone else will, and often not in your favor. Perception fills the gaps in what people don't know about you, so if you're not directing that narrative, you're at risk of being defined by others. This is why public relations, storytelling, and symbolic gestures are so effective. Not because they always reflect reality, but because they shape what people think is real. And in a society driven by impressions, what is believed becomes what is true in practice. Even in your personal life, this principle applies. Have you noticed how people treat you differently based on how you carry yourself, dress, speak, or assert your boundaries? These are all elements of perception, and they can either amplify your power or diminish it. Machiavelli's brilliance was not in advocating deception, but in revealing how appearances manipulate behavior. He was less concerned with moral purity and more concerned with what works, and appearances, he discovered, often work better than intentions. Take, for example, a leader who is feared but admired, compared to one who is loved but perceived as weak. The first may face resistance but commands respect. The second may be adored, but rarely followed in times of crisis. That's the cruel trade-off of power. We often think of integrity as being internally driven, but Machiavelli flips the lens. Integrity must also include how your strength is perceived externally, otherwise it's ineffective in shaping outcomes. In modern terms, this might mean you need to craft your personal brand, develop charisma, and project confidence, even if you're still growing into those qualities. Because people won't wait for your inner goodness to blossom. They'll judge you by what you radiate now. This doesn't make you fake, it makes you strategic. It makes you aware that you are always communicating something, even when you're silent, and that awareness gives you the power to influence, instead of being unknowingly influenced. So ask yourself, what image do you project? What message does your presence send when you walk into a room? These questions are not shallow, they are Machiavellian tools for survival and influence. If your reality is noble but your image is weak, your message won't be heard. And if your image is strong but your reality is hollow, eventually it collapses. The goal is alignment, but always with clarity on how perception drives power. Think of perception as the packaging of your essence. You may have gold inside, but if people see a rusted box, they may never open it. That's not superficiality. That's human psychology. So, rather than rejecting this truth, embrace it. Use it wisely. Let your projection enhance your power, not distort it. Because in Machiavelli's world, and in ours, the one who controls perception controls everything. Now tell me, do you think people perceive you as you really are? Or have you been misunderstood simply because you never took control of your own narrative? Topic 4. Strategic compassion, when kindness becomes a weapon. Kindness is often seen as the highest form of humanity. But what if kindness, when used strategically, could also become a source of unmatched power? Machiavelli wouldn't oppose compassion. He'd just warn against using it without calculation. Because even kindness, if applied blindly, can lead to your downfall. The idea of strategic compassion may sound manipulative, but it's not about being fake. It's about understanding the impact of timing, context, and intention. When used with precision, compassion becomes a force that disarms, persuades, and dominates, far more effectively than aggression ever could. Imagine a leader who punishes when necessary, but shows mercy when least expected. That mercy, strategically delivered, becomes a symbol of greatness. It creates loyalty, gratitude, and moral authority. But if that same mercy were constant, it would be perceived as weakness, and soon exploited. Machiavelli argued that a leader must know when to be cruel and when to be kind, not for pleasure, but for preservation. Strategic compassion means your kindness must serve a higher purpose, not your ego or your fear of rejection, but your ability to lead and influence outcomes. Think about people in your life who always say yes, who never confront, who offer help even when it's not respected. Their kindness, rather than earning admiration, often earns disregard. Why? Because kindness without boundaries becomes noise, and noise is ignored. Strategic compassion, by contrast, is rare, and precisely because it's rare, it's powerful. When kindness comes from someone who commands respect, it becomes an act of generosity, not desperation. It adds to your image, rather than undermines it. That's why Machiavelli didn't dismiss kindness. He redefined it. He saw it as a tool, not a trait. And in many cases, the right act of compassion at the right moment can win more hearts than 100 speeches. But this requires emotional discipline. Strategic compassion is not about pleasing everyone. It's about knowing who matters, what matters, and when kindness will truly amplify your authority. Let's be clear. Kindness is still essential. But Machiavelli forces us to ask, kindness for whom? For what purpose? At what cost? Those questions are uncomfortable, but necessary for anyone who wants to lead without being devoured. Because here's the truth. People respect what they can't control. If your kindness is always available, you become predictable, and predictability breeds entitlement. But if your kindness is deliberate and rare, it becomes unforgettable. That's why the most powerful leaders, in history, in business, in life, know how to balance firmness with empathy. They don't avoid kindness. They weaponize it to build loyalty, not dependency. So if you're someone who values your heart, Machiavelli wouldn't ask you to change. He'd ask you to protect it with strategy, to elevate it with boundaries, and to project it with strength. Your kindness should never cost you your dignity. Your compassion should never silence your voice. And your generosity should never be a ticket to exploitation. Instead, let your kindness become your crown, not your chain. Let it speak of your strength, not your need for approval. And let it serve your purpose, not your insecurities. Now reflect for a moment. Has your kindness been used as a weapon against you, or have you learned to use it as a shield and a sword when needed? Topic 5. The dangerous cost of naivete. why strategy must accompany good intentions. There's a difference between being good and being naive. While goodness comes from strength of character, naivete comes from blindness to reality. And in Machiavelli's view, naivete is not just a weakness. It's a threat to your survival. Machiavelli didn't despise morality. He despised illusion. He saw that many well-intentioned people fall not because they lack values, but because they lack strategic awareness. They believe that the world will respond to their kindness with fairness, but the world doesn't play by that script. In his words, a prince must learn not to be good when the occasion demands it. It's not a rejection of ethics, it's an embrace of realism. Because while intentions are noble, outcomes are what determine your fate. Goodness without wisdom is a candle in a storm, beautiful, but doomed to vanish. Think about the stories you've seen. The generous friend betrayed, the honest employee discarded, the loving partner replaced. These aren't rare accidents, they are patterns, and Machiavelli would argue, they happen because people mistake idealism for safety. To live without strategy is to trust a world that often rewards cunning over sincerity. And while that sounds tragic, it's also empowering, because once you understand it, you can rise above it. Strategy doesn't mean cold manipulation. It means being prepared, thinking ahead, reading the room, and protecting your values with intelligence. It means using foresight, not just feeling. Many believe that good vibes are enough to change outcomes. But energy without direction is scattered. Just like a soldier needs armor, a good soul needs awareness. Otherwise, the very goodness you cherish becomes bait for predators. Machiavelli saw clearly that human nature has layers, some noble, others brutal. And navigating these layers requires something more than hope. It requires tactical clarity. The danger of naivete is that it gives others permission to take advantage of you. Not because they're evil, but because the opportunity is there. Power abhors a vacuum, and if you don't claim your space, someone else will. That's why he insisted that a leader must not only act, but act with intent. Every move, every word, every silence must carry purpose. And even your kindness must serve a vision, not just a mood. This might sound exhausting, but it's not about being paranoid, it's about being conscious. When your intentions are backed by awareness, you become a force that inspires and protects, not a target that others exploit. Naivete often comes disguised as humility or positivity, but beneath it lies a dangerous assumption that the world will protect you just because you mean well. Machiavelli rips that illusion apart and offers something better: power through wisdom. When you add strategy to your goodness, you don't lose your soul, you amplify your influence. You lead without being led, you give without being drained, and you shine without being burned. Think of it this way: naivete wants to be loved, strategy wants to be respected. The true leader learns to balance both, to be admired not only for heart, but for presence, vision, and resilience. You don't need to become cold or manipulative. You just need to stop walking through life without a map. Machiavelli's gift is not cruelty. It's a compass for those who want to keep their soul, but also survive and thrive in a complex world. So here's the final reflection. Are you living with pure intention but no strategy? Are you protecting your values, or just hoping others will respect them by default? If you've ever been hurt not by evil, but by your own idealism, share your experience below. And ask yourself, what would your life look like if you combined your heart with Machiavellian clarity? The world is not as simple as good versus evil. And Machiavelli knew that better than anyone. He didn't tell us to abandon virtue. He showed us how to protect it with strategy, to guide it with clarity, and to project it with power. In this journey, we've uncovered the shadows behind morality, the dangers of blind kindness, and the critical role of perception. But more than anything, we've learned that true goodness is not fragile, it's fierce when paired with wisdom. So if this video made you rethink the way you approach your relationships, your career, or your life as a whole, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this insight today. Your voice can spark the awakening of someone else. And now I want to hear from you. What was the most powerful lesson from Machiavelli that you'll take into your life starting today? Leave your comment, and let's keep this conversation alive.